All right, we are now live.
Ready?
Yeah, I'm just hoping my family doesn't come in the middle.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to give you a minute or two so, we can let other parents come into our meeting today. But if you have any questions or anything, just please refer to the chat. I will be monitoring that for the whole Zoom meeting that we have today, or presentation, I'm sorry. So please let us know how we can best help you through the chat. And then Betsy will go over all of the questions at the end of the presentation.
Okay, well, I guess I can start by introducing myself. And I just realized if you want to contact me via email, my name is Betsy Hall, and this slide is the only place I put my email address. I apologize for that. I did want to ask actually, Brad Backwheel, if it's possible to give all of the attendees the link to this presentation.
Yes, absolutely.
If you're able to share that with them so that they have access. So you should have access to all of my slides, and there's lots of links in here and things that you have access to for afterwards, all of the content, as well as I've got some PDFs that you can download and print out. My email address is bhall@aeacs.org. I'm happy to answer questions that you have at any time. All right, so I guess I will go ahead and get started. I am the elementary reading specialist. I've been at Albert Einstein. I think this is my 11th year. I've kind of lost track. I've had both of my sons go through the school. My youngest is in 8th grade this year, so I'm a big supporter of the school, and I'm a big supporter of reading. Some of you may have had your students work with me in the past. I do small group reading support, and so what I'm going to be talking about today, I'm going to go ahead and get started. What I'm going to be talking about today, this is my welcome slide. You may notice a lot of cats. Cats are very important to me, and they're kind of fun. I had a really good time putting them into my presentation, so welcome. And here is my agenda that I'm hoping to cover in the next hour and a half. I want to give you kind of the big picture, a framework for literacy, so you understand kind of where kids start, how the reading process works, kind of where they should be at certain times, give you some kind of guidelines so you have a sense of if your child is where they need to be, if they're falling behind, if they're ahead, and kind of how you can support them accordingly. So in order to do that, I actually want to give you some skills to work with your child. We're going to go over English phonics, which if you are not a native English speaker, and even if you are, English is really a tricky language to learn to read because we have so many letters and so many sounds that don't say what they're supposed to. They're not regular. So we're going to talk about the regular ones, regular sounds and spellings. We're going to talk about sight words, sometimes called high frequency words. These are words that have irregular sounds and spellings, and your students have to learn them by sight. They have to memorize them. We'll talk about that, how we assess it, and I'll give you some fun activities to practice those at home with your student. I'm going to talk a little bit about the importance of phonological awareness, the ability to hear and manipulate sounds, really important skill, an important precursor to reading. I'm going to talk about 3 types of early readers and how to choose, because if you've ever tried to find a book for your beginning reader, you know it is not easy, it's confusing. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about some red flags or things to kind of be concerned about, watch out for, and then I will take questions. Right, so let's look at a literacy framework. When I think about reading, especially if I have a teacher come to me or a parent come to me and say, oh, my child is struggling with reading, my brain uses this as a way to think about what might be going on. And so this actually comes out of the California Reading and Literature Project, which is based at UCSD, and I've been working with them for many years. So you'll see above all is motivation. Kids need to be motivated in order to read. It has to be relevant to them. They have to experience success and get pleasure out of it. They have to have a purpose for reading. For our little guys, for our kinders and our first graders, our second graders, their motivation is they want to learn to read. Right? So we don't really have to worry about that too much unless they don't experience some success early on and they start to feel frustrated. So my role, our role as parents and as teachers, is to make sure that our kids don't feel that frustration, that they experience success. And reading is something that's pleasurable for them, right? So motivation over everything. And then our framework is broken into two pieces. And I think of this side, the decoding, encoding piece, is like the mechanics. That's the act of reading and spelling. Knowing the sound, knowing the letters, knowing the sounds that are connected, being able to put them together, to read them accurately and fluently. We've got to get this in place so that we can comprehend, because the whole purpose of reading is to understand, right? We read to be entertained, we read to be informed, we read to learn a recipe, we read for all kinds of purposes, right? But the main thing is we have to read to understand. We're not just saying words and sounds. We read to understand. So we're going to be focusing tonight on this part of it. This is really the K-2 part. Okay, so underneath decoding, encoding, we have word recognition and spelling strategies. The first thing under here is print concepts. Most students start kindergarten already having their print concepts in place. Not all of them, but most of them. So print concepts means that students know how to hold a book. They know where the front is and the back is. They understand that the pictures have meaning, that those letters on the page are words and that words have meaning. You know, before kids have this, you might have seen this even with your own students. They get a book. I don't know if you can see it. I'm holding it upside down and they're like, look, Mom, I'm reading. Okay, well, they have some print concepts, but they don't understand yet directionality and upside down and right from left. So print concepts is where we start, and that's usually kind of a pre-K skill. If not, it's worked on in kindergarten. All right, phonological awareness is the ability to hear individual sounds and words and manipulate them, blend them together and separate them for reading and spelling. We'll talk about that. Phonics, this is key. Students have to learn the English phonics, what the sounds are, how they work, how to recognize the combinations. They have to learn when those combinations don't work and what are the words that they have to memorize. They have to know by sight. Okay? We don't want students to read along and come to one of these non-decodable words and take their time to try to sound it out. It's not going to work. They're going to get frustrated and they're going to lose their fluency. So fluency has to do with the ease and the speed with which they read. Good reading should sound like talking. That's our goal. When students can read and it sounds like talking, when they're using inflection, when they're using different voices, they're stopping for the punctuation, then you know they've got fluency. They're automatic and they're comprehending. You can't read with expression if you don't understand what you're reading. So that's an important thing to listen for in your students as they move into second, third grade. Some students develop this in first grade, right? But we're listening for the fluency, the automaticity, so that their brain is freed up from all this mechanical stuff and they can really focus on comprehension. Comprehension is a more complex subject because all kinds of factors come into play. Do the students have the background knowledge to understand what it is that they are reading? Do they know about that topic? Do they have the vocabulary to understand what they're reading? Okay? This comes under what we consider academic language, the language of school and of learning. Okay? Do they understand how the particular text that they're reading is put together? Do they know the difference between reading a story and reading an opinion piece, or reading for information, reading a recipe, or following directions? Okay? Are they monitoring their own comprehension? This is a biggie. We're not so much focused on this in the primary grades. This is really, once kids are automatic fluent readers, we really want to make sure that they are monitoring their comprehension. I was once working with a student. He was in third grade. He was reading out loud to me. He kind of got off on one word and then literally read the rest of that paragraph. It was complete gibberish. It made no sense at all. He read all the way to the end. He stopped. He went, oh, well. And he just kept reading. It was like, wait. Something didn't make sense there. You need to go back and fix it. So we want to make sure that students know, hey, if it doesn't make sense, got to do something about it. We got to go back and check it out. We need to reread it. We need to look at the picture to see if that matches. We need to be monitoring our comprehension. And then kind of here at a higher level, can students take what they've read and can they reorganize that information? If you've ever paraphrased something or done an outline where you've had to take the information and reorganize that into an outline, you've done this. It's a pretty high level skill, right? So all these things fall into comprehension. We're going to be talking tonight about the decoding and encoding. Doesn't mean comprehension is not important. Where comprehension is going to come in for your kinder and first graders is through read alouds and the conversations that you're having with them about what you're reading to them. So ideally, if you're able to, it's great to read aloud a wide variety of things to your student. Fiction, nonfiction, anything that they're interested in, read it to them. Read about it. Talk about it. Talk about the words. Talk about the pictures. If your native language is not English, read to them in your native language. Read to them in Spanish. Read to them in German. Read to them in Vietnamese. Whatever it is, they'll get that background knowledge and that vocabulary. Then they just have to learn the English word for it. That's okay, right? So not that we're not thinking about comprehension. It's just going to come orally and auditorily for your students in kinder and first, because what we're really going to focus on is the mechanics of learning to read. All right, so why is English so difficult to learn to read? For a lot of reasons. The main one being that basically the British Isles, they're islands and they were conquered. And everyone who conquered left some of their language and their spelling behind. So about 26% of the English vocabulary is Germanic in origin, which actually makes being at Einstein a little bit easier because we can see the carryover from German into English. Nearly 30% of words in English are French, and another 30% is Latin. Different spelling rules. So you can see why this is so tricky. There are 26 letters in English our students have to learn, right? They're learning the names of the letters. But there are 43 or 44 sounds, kind of depending on which school of thought you follow. Old ways of producing words, for example, the WH sound, have disappeared. We no longer say what, when, where. Used to be kind of a windy sound. We don't do that. We say what, when, where, why. But we still have to spell it with the WH. And that's tricky for kids. They want to spell when, W-E-N. They want to spell what, W-U-T. That makes perfect sense. They have to learn, nope, this WH is still there. And then the other thing about English is we have all these crazy idioms like sit tight and hit the roof. Right? English is kind of crazy. So I've got something kind of fun to do. Now, normally I would, if you were sitting with me in the Learning Center, I would make you read this out loud to me. I do it every year to the parents. Unfortunately for me, I can't do that. So I'm hoping you'll read it out loud wherever you are, just so you can get a sense kind of in your mouth about what this is like. I will go ahead and read it to you. This is called Brush Up Your English. I'm not sure who it's by. It was attributed to Mark Twain, but I then found out that wasn't true. So I'm not sure who wrote this. But all right, and let's see if I'm going to be able to get this to scroll down. Sometimes it's a little tricky. Okay, here we go. All right, ready? I take it you already know of tough and bow and cough and dough. Others may stumble, but not you, on hiccup, thorough, slew, and through. Well done. And now you wish, perhaps, to learn of less familiar traps? Beware of herd, a dreadful word that looks like beard and sounds like bird. And dead, it's said like bed, not bead. For goodness sake, don't call it deed. Watch out for meat and great and threat. They rhyme with sweet and straight and debt. A moth is not a moth in mother, nor both in bother, broth in brother. And here is not a match for there, nor dear and fear for bear and pear. And then there's dose and rose and lose. Just look them up. And goose and choose. And cork and work and card and ward. And font and front and word and sword. And do and go and thwart and cart. Come, I've hardly made a start. A dreadful language? Why, man alive, I'd learn to speak it when I was 5. All right. That's kind of a fun thing. I really hope that you did that with me. It's always fun to hear the parents' reactions. So English is really tricky to learn. One of the things to be aware of is that learning to read itself is really difficult. It's not natural. Our brains are not wired to learn to read. The need to read has only been around as writing, and writing is only about 5,000 to 7,000 years old. We didn't need to read until we started to write. So if you think about that, think about how our brains have evolved to hunt and to run and to do different things. Our brains are designed to pick up language, whatever language a child is exposed to, as long as there's not something mechanically wrong with their hearing, they will pick up that language, right? We are designed to do that. But reading is something everyone has to learn from scratch. If you were a great reader, learn to read easily, that's fantastic. But there's no guarantee your child's going to learn to read easily. We cannot pass that on. Unfortunately, the converse is true. So if you struggle to learn to read, or if your spouse struggled to learn to read, or there's members of your family that have struggled to learn to read, chances are your child might also struggle to learn to read. So brain differences in that way are inheritable. Being a great reader is not. And, I know I'm a reading specialist. Both my kids have struggled with reading. So just because you're a great reader, there is no guarantee at all that your child will be a good reader. So let's go in and take a look at some English phonics. Normally, I would give you this so that you could take notes. So I encourage you, maybe if you have something to take notes on, that you do just kind of jot some things down. Unfortunately, I didn't have a way to get this to you ahead of time. What we're going to go through, normally what I ask the parents to do is I'm going to point to the letter and I want you to say the sound. Because you're muted, I don't know what you're saying. So you're just going to have to, I guess, listen to me. It's not nearly as much fun for me. One of the things I want to make sure, and you do kind of want to jot this down somewhere, it's really important when we are saying the sounds, especially for your kinders who are learning their letters and sounds, that we don't add the sound onto our consonants. Okay? If I'm looking at the word cat, C-A-T, you do not want the child to say ka-a-ta, because when they go to blend it together, ka-a-ta, ka-a-ta, that's not the word I want. I want the word cat. So I want to really make sure that we aren't adding the sound on. All right, so the little lines here, just so you know, that refers to position. In other words, when we get here to CK, that's only at the end of a word. We don't have any words in English that start with CK. Okay, so B says b, b. It does not say ba, it's b, b. CK, all say k, k. It's a very crisp sound. K. D says d, d. I remember, I'll teach you a trick for helping the students remember the difference between B and D, because that's a tricky one for a lot of kids. It's not a sign of dyslexia if they don't know and if they mix it up. It's just hard. Okay, F and PH both say this is the same mouth position we're going to use for the V sound. For V, we just turn our voice on. But for F, it's okay. G, this is a tricky one because G makes two sounds. When you say the name of the letter G, you hear J, J, right? And sometimes kids, when they look at G, they want to say J. And G does make the J sound, but only when it's followed by an E, I, or Y, which is why it's here under J. So we teach kids that G says G, G. You can tell if you put your hand on your throat, G, G. I almost feel like a frog. G, G. You can feel it here in the back of your throat. Okay. H, at the beginning of a word, I call this the bad breath sound, because it's like when you're checking to see if your breath is bad. It's literally a puff of air. It has no sound of its own. It takes on the sound of the vowel that follows it. Hit, hat. It's literally just a breath. All right, J says j, j. Also spelled DGE, like judge or edge. GE like gentle. GI like giant. And GY like gymnastics. And it's important that kids know this because half of the time you see the letter G, it makes the G sound, and the other half, it makes the J sound, right? No one-to-one correspondence here. Unfortunately, languages like Spanish or Finnish, those are languages that are considered much more transparent, and it's kind of what you see is what you get. Not so in English. All right, L says ooh. This is a sound that we can hold. It's kind of one of the earliest sounds we learn because it's an easy one to make. Ooh. This is generally the first sound that kids start making, and their first words tend to be mama or mommy because that sound is easy to make. Okay, N, also spelled KN at the beginning of the word, and I think we got this spelling from German, but we don't say the K sound. So in German, we say like knie. In English, we say me. So for the N sound, I want you to make the sound, and then I want you to plug your nose. Ready? Right? So this is a very nasal sound. It travels through our nose. We cannot make it if our nose is plugged. All right. P, another air sound. It is not P. We do not say pig. So Q, U, we show together because they're never apart. Okay? Q is a tricky one. We don't want to say qua, and you would think you would because there's a U there, but we do not say qua-een, qua-ick, qua-iet. So I'm going to encourage you to think about saying coo, like this dove makes. So queen, quick, quiet. You see, if you do that, your mouth is kind of pursed, in a better position to make that sound. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of words in English that start with QU. Okay, R and WR in English make the same sound. Another one to be careful of, it's not ruh. It's not ruh, it's again, it's kind of a closed mouth. Rabbit, red, not ruh. Right? All right, so S kind of partners up here with G. And sometimes I line between these because you can see it's this. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, S partners with G, but it's really C that does the E, I, and Y sound. So S can be spelled 4 different ways. This sound, the S sound, can be spelled by an S, but it can also be spelled C-E, C-I, and C-Y. And even when you say the name C, just like G, you're making this soft sound. So this can be kind of tricky for kids. Right? So we need to teach them. The letter C makes 2 sounds. It says K and it says S. So think about center, city, and cycle. Right? And it's important that kids learn this as well. Right? T says T, T, not ta, but T. V, we're going to make the F mouth position and just turn our voice on. W. W is really tricky for kids. Think about it for a minute. Say the name of the letter. W. What sound do you hear? You hear this. D. W. So kids look at this letter and they say, oh, it's W. D. We have to say, no, unfortunately, this time, it's not, the name doesn't make the sound. For most of the letters in English, the name makes the sound, but not for W. So we have to teach them that W says woo. We don't want to say wa. Again, we don't say wa otter, wa Wednesday. We say water, Wednesday. So I want to encourage you to think about the word woo, like to woo someone. Woo, it's a closed mouth. Woo. All right, X is the only letter we have that actually makes two sounds together. It's the sound of K and S. So it's two phonemes together. All right, here's another one. Say the name of this letter. Y. What do you think kids want to say when they see the letter Y? They go, yeah, I know that one. That's woo. You have to go, no, see, woo is the one that sounds like duh. This is so tricky for kids, right? So the letter Y makes the Y sound. Okay, so think about hear ye, yesterday, yummy, yucky. Okay, so we want to think about that, not ya, because it's not yesterday or yes, it's ye. Here's the thing about Y though. Y only makes the consonant sound at the beginning of a word. When it's at the end of a word, if it's at the end of a one-syllable word, it says I, like my and by. If it's at the end of a two-syllable word, like happy or funny, it says E. If it's in the middle of a syllable, like go back here, like the word gym or crystal, it says eh. So Y, I call Y like a double agent, right? Because Y acts like a consonant at the beginning of a word and like a vowel the rest of the time. Probably the most difficult letter for kids to learn. All right, so Z says Z, pretty straightforward, but it's also spelled by S at the end of a word. Think about has, does, glasses, right? So S can also make the Z sound. Okay, I hope you're still with me. I know that was kind of tricky. We're going to go into the digraphs and then my favorite part, the vowels, because English vowels are awesome. All right, so digraphs. This is an easy one to teach the kids. It's the quiet sound. Shh. And we don't really feel a lot of air. WH, I already said, we just make the regular old sound, right? CH and TCH, spelled with TCH, but we don't say the T. They make the sound. I'm going to turn sideways so you can see. I encourage the kids to do this, to hold their hand up in front of their face and pretend that they are sneezing. Chew. Chew. If you do that, and I hope you did, you should feel that air hit your hand. Chew. Right? It's a plosive. You should feel it. When kids are mixing up CH and TH, that's something that's kind of helpful for them. If they hold their hand up and say shh, shh, the SH sound, you don't really feel anything. Right? With the CH, we should feel it hit the hand. Okay, TH has two sounds. One you turn your voice on, one you turn your voice off. This is a tricky sound. It's also the latest developing sound for kids. We do not expect this sound to be fully developed in kids until they're 7. So if you have a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old and they're saying duh for the and dare for there, it's okay. You might want to gently correct them and say, oh, actually it's the, look at my tongue. I'm going to show you. When we make the TH sound, we have to stick our tongue out. And I tell the kids, oh, you know, it's rude to stick your tongue out, except now. You can stick it right out at me. So we say the, and your tongue really has to come out and your teeth go on top of it. And if your child is struggling, you might want to have them look in a mirror with them and kind of play with it. The. Okay, so that's the voice. You can feel it in your throat. The. Now turn your voice off and just blow. Thin. Thing. Okay. Bath. This is tricky for kids, and sometimes they want to substitute the F sound. So they'll say bath rather than bath. Again, it's okay. Don't push them or stress them out. Just kind of gently draw that to their awareness. We do make the TH sound with our tongue out. It's a fun one to say. Okay. NG, this is another one in your nose. So if you say song or long, we can feel it right here, only at the end of a word. PH we already talked about. ING says ing. All right, ED is a little bit of a tricky one for kids to learn because it makes 3 sounds. And the sounds depend on the letter that comes before it. Okay, so the 3 sounds of ED are art, like jumped. They're d, like rolled. And it's id, like started or wanted. Here's how it works. If the very last sound at the end of the word is an unvoiced sound, if there's no vibration, if it ends with a P or an F or a CH, then it says t, washed, pushed, kicked. If it ends with a voice sound, it says d, rolled, turned. And if the word ends with either of these 2 sounds, if the word ends with a T, like start, or a D, like land, then we say started, landed, because we wouldn't say start or start to. So that's why. Very often when kids are learning this, they want to id. Everything goes on id, like did, look did. They will eventually correct. Let's go on down to the short vowels. This is one of the most crucial things for your students to learn. Okay, this just says my internet connection is unstable, so I might freeze. I apologize. Okay, so here we have our short vowels. It's really important that students are clear on these, and I'm going to show you a little chart that will help. Okay, short A, say it with me. Short A says ah, ah, like apple. Short E says like elephant. Short I says like inchworm. These are the most common for kids to get confused on. Short O says ah, you drop your jaw, ah. Short U, because of the German U, kids often say ooh. So something I've been doing to kind of help them remember is we say, oh, you know when somebody punches you in the stomach and you go, ugh. They love to, so we pretend that we're punching ourselves in the stomach and we say, ugh. And then it helps them remember that short U says, Now, you may notice the rest of our vowels are here in this box. And this is because English has something super fun called the schwa. We like to call it the lazy schwa. I called it the evil schwa for a while, but I decided lazy is better because what it is, it's the sound. It's the easiest sound for us to make in English. We don't have to do anything but open our mouth. And any of our vowels in English can say if they are not in an accented syllable. So the easiest way to think about this is think about the words that start with A, like again, away, about, another. All of those started with A. We should say again. Right? The A should be a long sound, or even again, but we don't. We just say So fortunately, schwa is not something that your students have to worry about too much in kinder and first grade. That's something that's a bigger part in second and third grade. But you do need to know any of our vowels in English can say All right, R controlled vowels, we call these bossy R because the R changes the sound. So AR says R like car. OR says or like fork. Here's where it gets a little bit tricky. All 3 of these say the same thing. They say and almost every child for IR wants to say ear. It's tough. It looks weird to them. It's a hard one to learn. And unfortunately, this is just a matter of memorization, of learning that nurse is spelled UR and fern is spelled ER and skirt is spelled IR. They all sound the same. All right, so all of this is all kinder stuff that we've been working on. This is starting now to get into first grade. Okay, in first grade, vowels. So we start off with A and magic E, or silent E, we kind of call it things. Because we spent all this time really getting them to know these short vowels. Ah, eh, yay, you got it. Okay, guess what? Now that you know that. So this is really difficult for some kids. And it takes a while for them to make this kind of cognitive leap to understand that, nope, these are not the only sounds our vowels can make. If I put an E at the end of a word with A, the A says A now, like cake, like Eve, like ice, like home, like cute. So we teach kids, all right, here's long A, and here's a couple of other ways to spell it. We can spell it A if it's in the middle of a word, or AY if it's at the end. We can spell it EE or EA. For long I, we have IGH. That's a tough one for kids because it looks like ig, but it says I. O as O in the middle. OW says O at the end of a syllable or a word. And we know OW's tricky because guess what? OW. And then the long U sound is also tricky. U, like cute, and few. But this pattern also says ooh, like dude. So this over here, up, my internet is unstable again. Sorry. Here's, I think, where it gets kind of muddy. We have ooh, we have we have oi, we have ow, we have ah, which in German, AU says ow. So you can bet the kids are going to confuse that. Okay. And that's okay. They will get it sorted out. And then all of these here, this is just showing you this, the long vowel sound can also happen at the end of a syllable, like table, before, silent, locate, music. Okay, I'm guessing there probably are some questions about this, but if you can just hang on, we're going to keep on going through. So I want to show you onto the next slide. Oh, I did want to show you this, for especially in kinder. Here's our zoo phonics chart. Hopefully you've seen this. It's on the kinder website. Also, the first grade teachers use this as well. This has all of our little animal helpers to help the kids remember the sounds. So Allie, alligator, Jerry, jellyfish, Queenie, quail. This is a great resource. If you don't have a copy, print it out. I would suggest you get a copy from the teacher's website and print it out so your child has that as a resource. It can be really helpful. There's actually even movements to go with them. And for some kids, that is so important. It's Dee Dee deer and Innie inchworm and Jerry jellyfish. It's great for the kids. So I would encourage you to print that out if you don't already have it. All right, so I told you I had a little chart in here for you to look at to just kind of help remember the short vowel sounds. So we use the pictures of the cats and their position to help kids remember. So A is at the chair. E is touching the edge of the chair, hopefully not sharpening their claws. I is in the chair. O is on the chair. And U is under the chair. So one of the things that I like to do with the kids when I have them with me in my room is we like to act it out. So I have them stand up and push their chair back and I say, okay, stand at your chair. All right, go ahead and put your bottom on the edge of your chair. Now sit in your chair. This is their favorite one. I say, okay, safely stand on your chair and then under your chair. Put your head under, usually not their whole body. So as we practice this, we can get to the point where I can say, ah, and they need to just get in the right position. Ah, get to position. This is just a tool in the same way that learning to sing the alphabet song is a tool. When children learn to sing the alphabet song, they learn the alphabet in order, and they can use that if they have to put things in alphabet order. And it also just gives them something kind of to hold on to remember. So this is another tool to help learn the short vowel sounds, okay? Because this is so crucial for them to do our beginning reading. Here's just another little chart that we use and that you can have access to when you have this slideshow. Just some picture cues and a way to kind of organize this information. Long A like cake, long E like tree, long I like kite. Here are these two Y's that I talked about a little bit earlier. I don't think this is super clear. This line should be a little bit longer. You need to know that this is at the end of a 2-syllable word. Silly, funny. This is at the end of a 1-syllable word, like my and by. And then here's long O, and here's long U. All right, so let's take a look at this. I want you to think about your own kid or kids, and kind of think about where they are. And let's now look at these things in context. So what should your child be doing? I want to give a caveat to this, actually a couple of caveats. One caveat is obviously the situation that we're in right now with the pandemic, with being only in distance learning, that's making things, I think, happen more slowly for our kids. And they're not getting practice in the same way that they would. So we have to bear that in mind. Another thing to think about for our kids in particular is we're not asking them to learn to read and write in one language. We're asking them to learn to read and write in 2 languages. And for some of our kiddos, neither of these languages are their first language. They have another language, right? Their first language might be Spanish or Russian. So we're asking them to learn 2 phonics systems simultaneously. That's tough, and it takes some time. And so you need to know that even though we as teachers are responsible for covering the state standards and making sure that the kids get what they need in the right grade levels, we know our kids are going to be a little bit behind, some of them, where kids that are at an English only school would be. So if you have a niece or a nephew or other kiddos that you know of that are at another school and they're in the same grade as your child, try to resist the temptation to compare, because kids who are getting English only are going to move at a faster pace. By the time your child ends first grade at Einstein, they will just have had 1 year of instruction in English, half a year in kinder and half a year in German. A child at a traditional school will have completed 2 years of English instruction. So it takes our kiddos a little bit longer. They do eventually catch up and become multilingual, and they can read and write in both languages. And generally we see that by about 4th grade, most of our kids have caught up to kids who are in a non-immersion school. So just kind of, if you're concerned about that, just know that this is going to take a bit of time. Okay, so we talked about this, about the print concepts level, book title, author, illustrator, left to right, learning alphabet letter names, both upper and lowercase. So that's generally covered in pre-K, and then the first half of kinder. Ideally, your kinders should be pretty good with that at this point. They should really know the names of their letters and be really working on those sounds. So we move from the print concepts level into what we call the alphabetic level. Okay, so here's where they are really getting those sounds down. The consonant sounds we just looked at, the short vowel sounds. Okay, they're going to start blending. We say CVC words. All that means is consonant, vowel, consonant. Words like mat. So they can say at and come up with mat. We also need them to be able to segment CVC words. So they need to hear the word run and be able to break it up into its pieces. Because they need to be able to spell. Okay? So we want them to be reading and spelling CVC words, and we want them to be reading and spelling some sight words. Words like see and like and they. So that's the second half of kinder to the first half of first grade, really working on this. Okay, some of the first graders that I'm working with, my reading groups this year, this is where we're working, and that's fine. All right, so then we move into what we call the spelling pattern level. This is kind of, now we're looking at pieces within words. We've got blends that we're talking about, where we put 2 consonants together. We've got those digraphs, SH, CH, TH. We've moved into this big cognitive jump of long vowels. So we have final E. That's the first one we start with. And then we go into those long vowel pairs, the common ones, EA, EE, AI. We talk about that bossy R. We go into those other vowel digraphs, the less common ones like OU, OY. We do those inflected endings, the ED, the ING, and we continue to work on reading and spelling high frequency, irregular sight words. Okay, so this is the second half of first grade into second grade. Now, Are there kids who come into second grade who are still working at this level? Absolutely. Absolutely. This is a continuum. One of the things I wanted to say is that children learn to read anywhere between the ages of 4 and 9. That's all sort of developmentally considered appropriate. Some kids learn it right away. It doesn't seem like they even need any instruction. They just kind of intuitively get it, and they're reading before they come into kinder. It's unusual, but it happens. Some kids need a lot more practice, and they really don't become great readers until 3rd grade. That's okay, or even 4th grade. All right, so just kind of know that there's this spectrum. Rudolf Steiner, who founded the Waldorf schools, his theory was that kids were not ready to learn to read until their teeth started falling out. That was a developmental sign. And until their arms were long enough that they could reach over their head and grab the opposite ear. Go ahead and try it. You want to see if you can do it. So once these things have happened, because if you think about like toddlers and little kids, they're very disproportionate, right? Their heads are huge, their limbs are short. He really felt like when children had grown enough that they could touch their opposite ear, and when their teeth were falling out, that was a sign that they were developmentally ready to learn to read. We don't follow that here. We start kids learning to read before those signs happen. We start kids learning to read in kindergarten. Not everybody's ready, right? But it's important to know that it's a spectrum. All right, so then the last thing that we move into is the last stage, which is the polysyllabic morphemic stage, right? Morphemes just mean word parts that have meaning. So we talk about open and closed syllables. We talk about other syllable types. This is where they have to know all of these vowel teams in order to recognize them in syllables. Here's where we start really learning about word parts that have meaning. We talk about Greek and Latin roots. We talk about suffixes and prefixes. Here's where they can read words like inspirational, right? That they can break up that word into all those pieces and put it together. This starts in 2nd grade and continues on until students have mastered it. Okay? Kids continue to work on this in 3rd grade, in 4th grade, some students even until 5th grade. Okay, but just kind of think about where kind of should your student be and where are they? So the question I'm asking you to think about, where should your student be at this point in the year? So let's see if I can get this to work. So I wanted to show you an assessment that your child's teacher in 1st grade definitely has already done with them, and in kinder will be doing with them. This is something that we call the BPST. It is a basic phonics skills test. So if you can just kind of picture that sequence that we just went through, you can see this is what we're looking at. So the first thing we do is ask the students to make the letter sounds. And we start with the sounds that are the easiest to make, those ones that we can hold, the continuous sounds. Then we ask them, do they know the stop sounds? And then do they know these tricky ones, right? The H, W, the Y, the X, and the Q. Those are the hardest ones. We start there. The next thing we ask are the vowel sounds. Can they tell the short vowel sounds? Notice this is not in order. It does not go in alphabetic order. We want kids to be able to recognize those letters out of sequence and be able to identify the sound. So we ask them, do they know the short sound? And we ask them if they know another sound those letters make. Some kids already know, oh, this I, and it says it. Not all kids do that. It's okay. All right. The next thing we go into is we ask the kids to read words. Here are some CVC words. So can they read van, mop, lead, sun, fix? Those all start with the continuous sounds. These start with the stop sound, so they're a little bit harder to blend. Continuous sounds, that's where we start because the kids can hold on to it and attach the next letter. Sun. That's easy to hear, sun. That's easier than t, I, right? Those stop sounds you can't hold on to, so kids have to be better blenders. Then we say, well, okay, great. Do you know the digraphs with short vowels? Can you do some blends with short vowels? Can you do final E? This right here is kind of, well, actually, let me jump back. This is where we want kids to be ideally at the end of kindergarten. We would like them to be able to do these CVC words. If they can at least do some of them when they start with 1st grade, that's great. So in 1st grade, We work here. We go on to Final E. I think that's what first grade is actually, if they haven't already started, that's what they're going to be starting working on. And then first grade actually needs to work on the long vowels and even on the inflections. In second grade, we work on the R-controlled, the other vowels, and then here you can see we go into the syllables, right? So this is basically looking at that sequence that we just looked at, right? And this is the assessment that we use to measure our kids' progress, so we know. All right, so this is actually, I just wanted to show you what it looks like when a teacher does it. This is one that I did with a third grader at the beginning of the year. So this child's in third grade. We're no longer looking at this, and I'm going back to check and see, okay, did you get all that stuff from first grade? Yep, pretty much. So we're working on this. Okay, so if you haven't seen your child's BPST, the next time you talk to your child's teacher or you have a conference, ask to see it so you know where their child is, what they're working on. And it's helpful to know then where your child needs to go next. So you can start to point that out when you're reading with them. All right, so let's talk now about sight words. We've talked about all the regular sounds and spellings that our letters should make. Okay, what do we do when they don't do what they're supposed to? We have two different types of sight words. The first ones that we start with are words that contain sounds and spellings that have not yet been taught. So for example, in kindergarten, when we're just learning the letter names and sounds, but we want the kids to start being able to recognize sight words and be able to read things like I can see, we need to teach them the word see. This is a regular word, EE says E, but it's not taught until first grade. So we're going to teach this as a sight word. So we teach can, and we teach I, and we teach my. And we teach like. Those are all regular words, but those vowel patterns haven't been taught yet. So that's one kind. We pretty much only do that in kinder. Here's the bulk of what our sight words are. They are irregular words that do not follow the sound spelling cards or the sound spelling patterns. So if you look at this word, if you sounded this out, you would say was, but we say was. Look at this word. If you followed the rule, this word should say own. If you put a B in front of it, it says bone, right? That's regular. But this word is one, right? So for kids, that's really tricky. This word, you have to just memorize. All right. So again, I wish I could do this with you because this is a really fun activity, but I'm going to encourage you to do it on your own. I'm going to show you a word, and I want you to think, is this a regularly spelled word, or is it irregular? Does everything do what it's supposed to do? Can we sound it out, or do we have to learn it by sight? So actually, I'm going to give you, let's see, how many words do I have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If you can just like number from 1 to 7, grab a piece of paper or something. And if you could just take like 2 minutes and just kind of write down, is it regular? Is it decodable or irregular? You can just put a D for decodable and an I for irregular. I'll give you 2 minutes. I'll give you about 30 more seconds to finish up. All right, so let's see how you did. Unfortunately, I can't hear your feedback, but I'm hoping that you did this. Okay, so like, that's decodable. The I says I, the E does what it's supposed to. There's no problem. All right, the next word is of. That is irregular. When kids sound out the word of, they write UV because that's what it sounds like. So this is a word that they have to learn. Very often when they look at this word, they say for. Just know if your child does that, don't panic. Just say, nope, that's of. Doesn't start with an F. Okay, how about C? We actually already talked about this one. So C is decodable. Everybody does what they're supposed to do. The S says, the E's say E. Play. That's also decodable. The AY says A, the PL says pull, decodable. All right, so this next one, the word is should. Irregular. Okay, so what should this word say? If we were to sound it out, we would say showled. Showled. It should be spelled like stood or good. We should spell it S-H-O-O-D. Should. And that's very often how kids want to spell it. Or they'll spell it S-H-U-D. Okay, how about this one? Next one. Come. That is also irregular. Why? Magic E should make the O say O. It should say comb like home, but it doesn't. It says come like thumb or dumb, which are also irregular because of the silent B. All right, this last one is my. I don't know if you can see that. My is decodable. The M says the Y says I, which it does at the end of a one-syllable word. So that is a decodable word. All right, so how do we know what sight words your child needs to practice? We have a couple of different assessments that we do. This one here that I'm showing you is one that we tend to do more with the older kids. It's got 120 words on here, a lot. If you look here, you can see here, the is the most common word, I believe, in the English language. And there's some statistic like the first 100 words in the first 100 of these words make up something like 75% of the words in English. So it's really important that kids need to know them by sight. So we have the, we have of, we have a, which that's a little bit tricky. But remember, we also say it as very frequently. We make the schwa sound, so that's why it's a little bit tricky. To, you, was, are, they, from, have. Those are the first 10 most frequent non-decodable words. So now let's take a look at something that Miss Johnson, one of our kindergarten teachers, created. Okay, and so here you can see these are the words that we use in kinder and first. You can see that they are similar, but some of these are decodable still. C is decodable, and actually he, be, she, we, me, no, so, go are all decodable because they follow the rule that when a syllable ends on a vowel, the vowel is long. That's an open syllable. These words are all just one syllable. And my and by are also decodable. Okay? But this hasn't been taught yet, and the students need to know them in order to access what they're doing. So that's why it's being taught here. Right? This is a resource that you have. Let me show you an additional resource. Okay, this is the Kinder sight words, and this is by unit, kind of when they're covered. And you can see there's a lot of overlap. Here's he, here's she, here's me, here's no. All right, said is a really tricky one. Students struggle with this for a long time, so it's important that they have access to it soon. I, the, and you can see a lot of these words that we have just talked about. Okay. All right, great. So now you know what some of the words are that your students need to know. What do you do about it? Let's talk about some fun ways to actually practice sight words. The trick with sight words is repetition. They just need to practice them over and over again. So our job as parents is to try to make that as fun as possible, right? The more fun the kids are having, the more they're going to want to do it, the less it feels like work. Here are some suggestions for you. If you can get a plate that has a rim or a cookie sheet, something with an edge, and get some shaving cream, make sure it's one that you like the smell of. Some of them are very perfumey. Get some shaving cream, or this was really fun, get some Jell-O pudding, put it on the tray, have the kids spread it out. You say the word, they have to write it. And then they can erase. You say another word, they have to write it. After they do enough words, oh, make sure their hands are clean if you're going to do the pudding. After they've done enough words, if they've done a great job, they can lick the plate and have the pudding. Okay? Or they can play in the shaving cream. That's a really fun thing to do. Sidewalk chalk is fantastic. You can do sidewalk chalk anywhere and it just washes off. So you say the word, they write it. You write the words on the sidewalk and they have to hop and say the word as they land on it. That's a great thing to do. Another thing, if you can get some Post-its, kids love Post-its. They're like magic to them. So your child has a word or two that they are really struggling with. Write it on 5 Post-its and place them around the house. Put it on the refrigerator door, and before they open the refrigerator, they have to read that word. Put it on the back of the toilet seat. If they're a boy, they're going to have to look at it. Okay? Put it on their pillow. Put it on the front door. Put it, if they have bunk beds, put it under their bunk bed. Find places to put it, and your child has to read that Post-it every time they see it. Or put Post-its around the house with the sight words, call out the word, and they have to run around the house and find it and bring it back and stick it someplace. You can play all kinds of games with Post-it. Let them write on the Post-its. They love it. If you can, find a space where you can create a success wall. Put that blue painter's tape as an outline, someplace where you can have the child, once they've learned that word, once they own it, they get to stick the word up on the wall, and it's there for them to see and to celebrate that they have learned that word. And maybe after they've earned so many words, they can get some kind of treat. You can make it kind of fun that way. You can make sight word cards and play memory. I've got all kinds of ideas. You can make 2 sets of cards and put them on the floor and race your child across the floor. You can go on a scavenger hunt. You could play the game of war with your sight word cards. You can play Go Fish. You can make a tic-tac-toe board. Here's what I like. If you get those Post-its, or if you've got a ladder, and you can tape things up on the wall and then give your child a flashlight, and they can go into the room and you can turn off the light and they can shine the flashlight on the words and they have to read them that way. You can make the words out of Play-Doh. You can make salt and flour dough. You can get alphabet cookie cutters, alphabet cookies, alphabet cereal, alphabet soup, and have the kids make the words that way. Using that same cookie sheet or tray, you can put in rice or beans, or you can use salt or sand. I have used salt and I use it in the classroom, but I have to tell you, salt can get kind of sticky. If there's any moisture on their hands, that can be kind of a tricky thing. But if you get a tray and you put rice in it, so it's covered, we want them to have that tactile experience. This works great for learning letters as well. You say a letter name, they have to write it in the tray, and then they shake the tray and it erases. You say the letter sound, they have to write the letter. Okay? So you can use this for learning letters, for learning sounds, for learning words. I had something else now and I have lost it. Shoot. Okay. Oh, I know. Sandpaper is also great. If you can get a sandpaper and have the child put it down, or take some aluminum foil and crinkle it and then flatten it out, something that's bumpy, and have the child practice writing on that bumpy surface, that tactile input can be really helpful. There's a lot of research to show that that helps kids learn things and learn them faster. Let me share something else with you. If you're a DIYer, Something that I use in the classroom that the kids really love are these sound tubs. Now mine are kind of fancy pants, but you do not have to have a fancy pants one. You can get a yogurt container and go around your house, or have your child, even better, go around your house, look in the junk drawer, look in their toy box, maybe look in the yard, and find objects that begin with a sound that they're struggling with. Right? So if they're struggling with the difference between and w, with M and W, you might go around the house and find some things that start with and some things that start with w, and make two different tubs, and then have the child play with them. Say what the object is. This is a man. This is a mop. Okay? And even mix the objects up and have them sort them. There's a lot of things you can do. Use a shoebox. One of the things that I do with the kiddos when they're with me is I have something called the Alphabet Mystery Box. It's a game from Lakeshore, but you can absolutely make your own. If you get a sheet of cardboard, or even you can use a cookie sheet and magnetic letters, and put the alphabet down in order, and then make a box that you cut out a hole in, and then put the objects in there. They stick their hand in the box, they pull the object out, they say, oh, this is a penny. Penny starts with the letter P, and they have to put it on the letter P. Oh, this is a raisin. Raisin starts with that's the letter R. So you can make an alphabet mystery box. Here's another thing that's super awesome. So especially when kids are learning to read, and I need them to reread, and I need them to listen to themselves, I use a whisper phone. Unfortunately, I cannot let you listen to it so you can hear what it sounds like, but it's amazing. What it does is it focuses your voice so you have to whisper, and the kids can hear themselves really well, and they love this. My 5th graders love this. Like, nobody is too old for the whisper phone. You can purchase a fancy pants one at Lakeshore or on Amazon, or if you're handy, you can get some PVC pipe, a couple of elbows here, and you can make your own whisper phone. Okay, and so they will love this. They will read and read and read if they can use the whisper phone. So that's kind of a fun thing that you can do. All of these are things that you can do to practice sounds and sight words. Okay, here's another thing that I highly encourage you to have, if you have the resources to do so, is to get some magnetic letters. And I actually, I could not make this link smaller. This is a gigantic link to Amazon. But this set is about, I think, about $24, so it's kind of expensive. But what I love about it is that the vowels are red and the consonants are blue. And that's so important because kids really need to develop that understanding that words are made up of both. We have 2 words in English that are made up of a single vowel, A and I. Every other word in English has to have both consonants and vowels. You cannot have a word in English without a vowel. Guess what, kids very often when they're learning to spell forget. They get the beginning sound, they get the ending sound, they forget the vowels. So if you have red and blue letters, they have to have both colors. They have to have that vowel in there. And this really helps make it clear. If you already have some magnetic letters at home, one of the things you can do is just pull all the vowels out and get a Sharpie marker, like a black Sharpie marker, and just color all of them black. Something so that the kids can see, oh, I always have to have one of these in my words. That's something that's really great if you can do that. All right, so let's move on and talk quickly about phonological awareness, what it is, and how you can support it. This is one of the early predictor skills for reading. Students who struggle with their phonological awareness skills are often kids who struggle to learn to read. Okay, so what is it? It's the ability to hear the individual sounds in words and be able to manipulate them. Okay, so over here we've got all kinds of things, alliteration and deletion and isolation. But really, it's what I need you to know is it's the ability to hear and to manipulate the sounds. All right, so let's look at some examples. What does that actually mean? Okay, here's one of the first skills, and one of the easiest skills is rhyming. I have found in my experience, I've been teaching about 30 years, kids who struggle to rhyme tend to struggle to learn to read. So this is something, if your child is struggling, rhyming is something that you can work on. This is about developing that understanding that these ending chunks, we call this, the first letter is the onset, and this second part is the rhyme. that in words that rhyme, that ending vowel and consonant have to be the same, right? So all of these have the AT. This is something that is really important. You can sing rhyming songs. You can read rhyming books. Cat and Hat, Dr. Seuss has a ton of rhyming books. If your child is in kinder, I sent out earlier in the year a parent resource chart, and I put some rhyming resources on there so you could check with your kinder teachers. And I can also see if I can make that available for first grade parents. So rhyming, really crucial skill. So another skill is being able to identify the first sound in a word, and then the last sound in a word, and then the middle sound in a word. So we start out by saying, okay, I'm going to say a word. I want you to tell me the first sound. Man. What's the first sound you heard me say? Hopefully they would say, Okay. I'm going to say a word. I want you to tell me the last sound you hear. Cat. What was the last sound? T. When we do these kinds of activities, we're developing their ability to listen and discriminate. You could do things like this in the car, while your child is taking a bath, while you're cooking dinner and they're sitting out there playing with their rice in the tray, right? These are things that you can do. You just need to think of 3-letter words, say the word, and ask the child to tell you the first sound, or ask the child to tell you the last sound. Right, then we move on to the most crucial skill, which is blending. So kids need to be able to look at a letter, know that that letter makes a sound, and be able to connect those letter sounds together into a word. So we practice this auditorily, okay? Phonological awareness is really all about listening. There's no writing involved with this. It's really their ability to hear. So if I say to them, I'm going to say a word slowly, and I want you to tell me what I say, man. I want them to say man. Okay? This is, of course, so crucial for reading, because that's what they're going to do then when they start looking at the print. They need to look at the letter M, say in their head. Look at the letter A, say ah. Look at the letter N, say and then put it together. But you can practice this with your child. Okay, I'm going to say a word slowly. You say it fast. Segmentation is the opposite. We say the whole word, and we want them to say the individual sounds. This is crucial for spelling. When kids are writing and they want to write the word man, in their head, they have to sound it out and hear those sounds and then write that down. Okay, so you could say, all right, I'm going to say a word. I want you to tell me the sounds that you hear. The word is man. Ah, and they would say the sounds. A more difficult skill is manipulation. When kids, once they get good enough, we can have them start changing sounds around. This helps with their ability to spell. Right now, though, really the things for you to focus on as parents would be rhyming, the ability to hear the first and the last sound, and then to work on blending and segmenting. Okay, so how can you support this? Sing rhyming songs, read rhyming stories. This is about, kids also need to understand that the smallest unit of sound is the sound a letter makes, that we group our sounds into words and we put those words into sentences. Okay, so they need to develop kind of that beat. When we speak, we have a rhythm. So listening to music and just clapping on the beat will actually develop their phoneme awareness. You're developing that discrimination. Clapping out syllables in names and words. This really helps them when they start to read bigger words. So if you can say their name, Jessica, okay, or alligator. Something to know, every syllable has one vowel sound. Can't have more than one vowel sound in a syllable. So that's where we clap them. You can play language games with them. Okay, it's time for lunch. What time is it? And I have a link here to a resource for you. Whoops, I didn't show it. But there's a resource, there's a link here that you can click on, 9 ways to build phonological awareness in pre-K and kinder. So that's phoneme and phonological awareness. Okay, great. So now we know about the phonics, we know about the sight words, we know about the phoneme awareness. What should your child be reading? How do you choose a book, right? If you've ever gone to the library and tried to pick out a beginning reader, if you've gone to Target and tried to buy one or looked on Amazon, you know it's really challenging. Okay, so let's talk about what is good for kids. Before kids know all of their letters and their sounds, they can read predictable books. Predictable books are also called pattern books. They are repetitious and they use picture clues. So here you can see here's a sight word. Sight word, sight word, sight word. They probably can't read this word, but they can tell what it is by the picture. So they can say, I see a cow. The dots are there for them to touch so that they're developing that one-to-one correspondence. Oh, I know. This is a word. This is a word. This is a word. This is a word. Okay. Oh, it's repeating. I see a, what is this? Pig. Pig. Look, it starts with a p sound. That's right. You can see how this is patterned. Here's another example of a predictable book. They will pump. They're pumping the basketball. They will ring. They will jump. They will shop. These words are actually all decodable, right? So they can use the pictures to kind of help them sound it out. But the main focus of these are for practicing these beginning sight words and for developing this idea of reading, okay? Not so much decoding. It's really just developing this idea that this is what we do. A lot of picture support, a lot of picture clues. Unfortunately, it's a little bit tricky to find predictable books. If you are a kinder parent, Scholastic offers books in the book order. And I'll try to point them out when I send out the flyers, but you can find those predictable books. Okay, so let's go on to the next. Whoops, too far. Nope, hold on. Sorry here, let me go back. All right, so once they know a few of the vowel sounds and some of the consonant sounds, we're ready to leave those predictable books behind, right? Because part of the predictable books is guesswork. We want them to be glued to print. We want them to be putting all their energy into sounding words out. So these are decodable texts. They're not great literature. They're just not. They are repetitious. They are simple. Often they're kind of stupid. I have to work really hard to make the stories exciting, but the kids are thrilled because they can read them. So here you can see, look at the pattern. The bat and a rat sat on a mat. The bat and a fat rat sat on a cat. Lots of, these are all decodable, right? Except for the word the. They should be able to sound these out and blend them. Here's a little bit harder one. This one's now got some blends. It's got here the Y, but still this is almost all decodable. This is our goal. We want to move them out of predictables and into decodables. Once they've mastered the short vowels, the final E, and some of those most common long vowels, in other words, kind of once they're at that end of first grade place, and they've got at least 30 of the sight words, they're ready to move into what we call easy readers. Good place to look, this is a little bit blurry, but those I can read books. I can read level 1 and level 2. Frog and Toad is a great one for kids to read, okay? These are books that are a mixture of decodable and sight words, and it's got these more complex patterns. They're now, and once they can read these, they are becoming independent readers. These are much easier to find. Unfortunately, the predictable books and the decodable books are harder to find. You can find them, they are available, and I think I've included some resources for you to be able to download some online and print them out. Scholastic also has some. Let me give you a word of caution. Just because something says level 1 or my first book or easy reader does not mean that it's appropriate. And if you have ever looked at Fancy Nancy, which Fancy Nancy is fantastic to read out loud to your child, to your beginning reader. This Fancy Nancy is all about developing vocabulary, which I'm all for. But look at the words here that are in this level 1 book. Desperate, heroine, thrilling, crestfallen. Those are fantastic words. Is your beginning reader going to be able to sound that out without frustration? No, they're not. So read Fancy Nancy to your child. Hopefully by the time they're in second grade, they can start reading Fancy Nancy on their own. But for your kinder and for your first grader, keep this as a read aloud. So really now kind of use your new language eyes when you're looking at books for your child to read. You need to open up and look at a couple of pages and say, what are they asking my child to do? Are there complex vowels in here? Has my child learned those complex vowels yet? We don't want them to get too frustrated or to give up, right? We want them kind of at their level where they're working, but they're not too frustrated. All right, let's go on to, should I be concerned? I know parents are always concerned about reading disabilities, reading difficulties, especially if they struggle. So here are a few potential red flags. If your child has problems with understanding what is read out loud to them, if you're reading in their native language and you're asking them questions about what you read and they're not understanding, you're not able to tell you about it, that's something to note down and to pay attention to. If they don't have an awareness of phonemes or the sounds that make up words, often including a difficulty with blending sounds to make words, this is something some children really struggle to blend and they need additional practice, right? This is something to pay attention to. If your child needs more practice, if they're struggling with blending, it's time to let your teacher know or reach out to me and we can talk about how to support them. If a child really struggles with spelling, including spelling the same word 3 ways in the same piece of text, or if they knew it yesterday and they can't remember it today, or they just spelled it correctly and now they say, oh, I don't know that word. That's something to be aware of. If they have difficulty with the sequence or order of letters and words. Now, beginning readers and writers reverse things. Beginning readers and writers sometimes do what we call mirror writing, where they write from right to left. They should outgrow it. It's not too much of a concern unless it continues on. Oh, I meant to tell you, so about the B and D. So something that you can do, if you put your hands together, you can make a bed. And I wish I had a graphic of this here. Let me show you on my whiteboard. This is something I do with the kids. I should have had this prepared. I'll show you. Okay. I'm hoping that you can see this. Let me pull my thing over so I can see it. Okay, so there's a bed. Can you see how the letters in the word bed form a bed? The B makes the pillow, the D makes the footrest, and I draw my little person sleeping. So then I tell the students, okay, now you with your hands make the bed. If you take your hands and put them down flat and look down at your hands, you will see here's the letter B and here is the letter D. I will try to record a video of myself doing this so it's a little bit clearer. But if you can look down at your hands, if you make the bed and look down and actually put your hand down, you can see the bed. B, E, D. And I still have some 3rd and 4th graders, so I can see underneath their table, they've got their hand making the bed. For some kids, that really helps. Here's the deal about B and D and P and Q and 6 and 9 and G and sometimes 4. So kids have something when they're little called object constancy. It helps them make predictions. So when they see a dog the first time, they say, what is that? You say, oh, that's a dog. Then, so they see a Chihuahua. Then they see a Great Dane. Well, what's that? Oh, well, that's a dog too. So they start learning that dog means all different kinds of things. They know that a chair is a chair, even if it's upside down or sideways. It's still a chair, okay? So that's called object constancy. That's great, except in the written language. So you can take a stick and a ball, and it's a B when you do it this way, and it's a Q. Here, it's easier if I write this down. All right, never mind. I'm not going to write it down. You can just have to picture it in your head. Just think it's a B, it's a P, it's a Q. I can't make my hand go that way. It's a D, it's a G if it has a monkey tail. If it stands up, it's a 9, right? If it's this way, it's a 6. kids are like, wait, what? You told me that it doesn't matter which direction I turn something. Yeah, well, except for language. So it is super common for them to mix up the B, D, P, Q thing. Don't worry about it. We can help you make a little sort of cheat sheet for them to learn it. But it only becomes a concern in terms of it, like a sign of a disability, when it's heading towards the end of second grade and the kids are still doing that. In kinder and first, no problem. You just gently remind them and don't worry about it, okay? If they have trouble rhyming words, right? Remember I said that's a predictor. If they have difficulty pronouncing words, so if like my son used to say peculiar for computer, right? He switched the pieces around. If they have a delay in speaking compared to most kids, children who are late speakers or who have speech developmental issues, speech delays, that is a sign. Those kids do sometimes struggle to learn to read. And that's important that you reach out and you let your teachers or let me know so we can help them. We can just kind of watch. If they have a delay in learning the alphabet, numbers, days of the week, just what we consider that kind of general knowledge that they need to know, they really struggle with that. That's a sign that you need to reach out and ask for help. I can see I'm running out of time. Okay, so I did put some resources in here for you that I have found so helpful. Here's a couple of websites. The Measured Mom has a huge variety of resources. All you need to do is sign up for her email, and she'll teach you things, but you don't have to do any of that. Just sign up, and then you have access to hundreds of free resources, games and activities and decodable books that you can print out. It is a wonderful resource. I highly recommend it. Here's another one, Carl's Corner. Lots of books. She even has books in German that you can print out. Starfall is another great website that has books. Some activities are free, some you can purchase. If you have the means, I encourage purchasing their beginning readers. They're inexpensive and they're decodable and they offer lots of practice and the kids love them. And then here's another website, This Reading Mama. Again, you just need to sign up and then you can get all kinds of resources. Phew, okay. 4 minutes to spare, I think. So thank you for listening. I know I said a lot and talked really quickly, so I would like to open up the chat now for questions if you have any. So let's see if I can see. So if anyone has any questions or you need further clarification, if you want to go ahead and put it in the chat. We will be sharing this presentation with you so you have the links. There's actually a couple more slides after this. I just figured I wouldn't have enough time, but feel free to look at those other things. I can't tell if there's anything. I guess I'll wait a minute or so to see if anyone has any questions or is typing anything in the chat. I hope when we come back to school at some point, I don't know if it's going to happen this year, but when we do come back on campus, that you will come and see me. My office is upstairs above the library, and I have a parent resource library full of all kinds of books that you can come and check out from me. I have predictable books and decodable books and books in German and books in Spanish and all kinds of resources, and I have a checkout system. So when we get back on campus, I will make that available. Okay, it's looking like maybe there aren't any questions. So if there aren't, thank you for your time and your attention. I hope that this was useful. Feel free to reach out.
There's a question, Betsy.
Is there? Oh, I'm sorry, it's not showing up in my chat box.
She said, or someone said, I don't know. It says, should we concentrate on English as we cannot help with German?
That's a great question. If English is your native language, yes, do what you feel best about supporting. There are resources to support in German, and I would encourage you to reach out to your child's German teacher to ask about those resources. I struggled. I don't speak German. I struggled to support my kids in German as well. So focus your resources on what you're able to do. If you don't feel like you can do the German, then yes, focus on the English. And again, I want to say, if English is not your native language and your native language is Spanish or another language, please don't stop reading and speaking in that other language. It's wonderful for your child to be exposed to your home language. You want them to understand it and be able to speak it and communicate. I might recommend holding off on teaching your child to read and write in a language other than English or German right now, until they've got the phonics of these two systems down. Oh, I see. We're in the Q&A, not the chat. Got it. Will you contact us if our child's assessment is behind? So I don't know if your child is behind unless their teacher reaches out to me and lets me know. So your child's teacher will be assessing. We'll be discussing that with you. I would encourage you to ask about it and to ask how your child is doing. And then if there's the teachers are great about letting me know. Okay, so if there's a concern, I'm already seeing, I think I have got about 62 kids on my caseload right now. I do 7 Zooms in a row each day. So if your child is behind, your child's teacher will reach out. However, if you feel like you have a concern, don't hesitate. Send me an email. We'll set up a chat and we can talk about it. I'm happy to just talk to you and reassure you or offer further resources. Okay, anything else?
And then just as a reminder, and for those parents that don't know, we're going to be having a parent university on German support this January 28th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. And this is going to help you learn different strategies to help support your German speaking student. It will be similar to what Ms. Hall is doing right now. So, you know, if you're having a little bit of problems or questions or concerns regarding the German portion of our student learning, please check it out from 6 to 7:30 as well on January 28th.
Okay, well, oh, is there one more question? Nope. Okay, well, it is 7:31, so let me stop sharing. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time to learn about reading and about supporting your child. You really are your child's first and best teacher. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time. And I look forward to hoping to meet you and see you in person at some point in the future.